The weight of the old Remington 700 Bull Taction rifle in my hands was a familiar comfort, a ghost from a past life when I was just a man who enjoyed hunting on weekends, not a hollow, doubt shell of father defined by the gravestone of his only child. The walnut stock was smooth against my calloused palm, and the cold steel of the barrel seemed to suck the warmth right out of the room, matching the icy void that had taken up residence in my chest for the last 1,825 days. It had been 5 years since the music stopped in my house, 5 years since the vibrant, chaotic noise of my daughter Sarah's life was replaced by a suffocating, tomb-like silence that pressed in on my eardrums until I thought I might go mad. But tonight the silence was broken. It was shattered not by laughter or music, but by the roar of an engine and the drunken, braying laugh of the monster who took her from me, a sound that drifted through my open window and ignited a fuse I thought had long since burned out. They say that vengeance is a dish best served cold, that time cools the hot blood of rage into a calculated, icy resolve, but sitting there in the dark of my living room, smelling the gun oil and feeling the mechanical click of the bolt sliding home a 30-06 round, I felt nothing but fire, a searing, volcanic heat that demanded release. Before I tell you what happened when I walked out that door into the humid night air, I have to look you in the eye and ask you a question that haunted me every step of the way. If the world took the most precious thing you ever had, chewed it up and spat it out, and then the person responsible just walked away with a smile on their face, would you trust in a system that already failed you? Or would you pick up the rifle? Tell me right now if you think I was wrong for deciding that some debts can only be paid in blood. To understand why a 60-year old retired hardware store manager found himself sitting in the dark with a high-powered weapon, you have to understand what came before the silence. My house wasn't always like this. It used to be loud. Sarah was one of those people who didn't know how to live quietly. She entered a room like a whirlwind of energy, opinions, and infectious laughter. She was 22, just out of college, with a degree in social work and a heart so big I worried it would get her crushed by the weight of the world she wanted to save. My wife, Martha, had passed away from cancer when Sarah was 16, so for those crucial years, it was just us two against the world. We were thick as thieves. I wasn't just her dad. I was her mechanic, her career advisor, her chef, and her anchor. Every Friday night, no matter what, she'd come over for dinner. I'd cook lasagna, her favorite, the recipe Martha taught me. And she'd tell me about the kids she was helping, the bureaucracy she was fighting, the dreams she had of opening her own center one day. The house vibrated with her presence. I could hear her humming in the kitchen, the television playing her terrible reality shows, the constant asterisk, ping asterisk of her phone. It was the noise of life, and I loved every decibel of it. Then came that Tuesday night in November. It was raining, a slick, greasy rain that made the roads treacherous. Sarah was driving home from a late shift at the crisis center. She was 4 blocks from her apartment. I remember I was watching a rerun of an old Western, half-ass, leap in my recliner, waiting for her. I made it home safe. Dad, text. The phone rang, but it wasn't her ringtone. It was an unfamiliar, jarring buzz. It was St. Mary's Hospital. The voice on the other end was professional, detached, but I could hear the grim undertone that every parent dreads more than their own death. There had been an accident, a T-bone collision at high speed. I needed to come right away. The drive to the hospital is a blur in my memory, a fragmented nightmare of windshield wipers slapping against the glass, and my own heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. When I got there, the silence had already begun. The doctor, a kind young man who looked far too tired, didn't have to say the words. I saw it in his eyes. Sarah was gone before the ambulance even arrived. The other driver, he told me, walked away with a bloody nose and a bruised ego. His name was Bryce Davenport. He was 20, 4 years old, driving a brand new BMW his daddy bought him, and his blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. He had run a red light at 60 miles an hour, plowing into the driver's side of Sarah's little Honda Civic. Bryce Davenport wasn't just any drunk driver. He was the son of Preston Davenport, a real estate mogul who owned half the county and had the police commissioner on speed dial. The weeks that followed were a descent into hell that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The funeral was a haze of black umbrellas and well-meaning platitudes that felt like insults. "She's in a better place," they said. No, she wasn't. Her place was here, eating lasagna and complaining about her caseload, not in a mahogany box in the cold ground. After the funeral, the silence truly set in. I'd walk into the house and just stand in the hallway, waiting for a sound that would never come. I kept her room exactly as she left it, the half-read book on the nightstand, and the clothes draped over the chair. Sometimes I'd sit in there just to smell her perfume, desperate for any connection. But the grief was only half the burden. The other half was the blinding hot rage at the injustice of it all. The legal system, which Sarah believed in so passionately, betrayed her completely. The Davenports hired a team of slick, expensive lawyers in $1,000 suits who turned the courtroom into a circus. They attacked the evidence, they attacked the police procedure, they even tried to subtly suggest Sarah might have been distracted. Sitting in that courtroom, watching Bryce Davenport sit there looking bored, checking his expensive watch, never once showing an ounce of remorse, I felt something inside me break. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the photos of Sarah's mangled car. He looked like he was waiting in line at the DMV. The judge, a man who I later found out had his re-election campaign heavily funded by Davenport Associates, bought their song and dance. The plea deal was a slap in the face that echoed louder than the crash that killed my girl. Vehicular manslaughter was pleaded down to negligent driving. The sentence, 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a suspended license for a year. No jail time, not a single day behind bars for taking a vibrant, beautiful human life. I remember standing outside the courthouse in the blinding sun as the Davenports walked out, surrounded by reporters. Preston Davenport had his arm around his son's shoulders, shielding him from the cameras. As they passed me, Bryce finally looked in my direction. He didn't offer an apology. He just gave me a faint, arrogant smirk, a look that said, "We won, old man, we always win." That smirk burned itself into my retinas. It became the fuel that kept me going through the darkest days. 5 years passed. 5 years of waking up in a silent house, going to work just to have something to do, coming home to the silence, and staring at Sarah's picture until my eyes burned. I stopped going to church. I stopped socializing. I became a ghost in my own town. The anger didn't fade. It just compacted, becoming denser and heavier, a black hole in the center of my being. And then tonight happened. It was the 5th anniversary of the crash. I had spent the day at the cemetery, cleaning the headstone and talking to the dirt. On my way home, I had to drive past the intersection where it happened. I usually took the long way around to avoid it, but tonight, for some reason, I felt drawn to it. There's a sports bar on the corner there, a loud, obnoxious place with neon signs and cheap beer. As I sat at the red light, the same light Sarah had stopped at, I looked over at the bar's patio. And there he was, Bryce Davenport. He looked older, thicker around the middle, but the arrogance was unmistakable. He was the center of attention at a large table, holding up a shot glass, laughing that same braying laugh I had heard in my nightmares. He was back. His probation was over, his community service done. He was free to live his life, to drink, to laugh, right on the corner where he ended my daughter's existence. It was a cosmic insult, a profound blasphemy. He was celebrating 5 years of freedom on the anniversary of her death. I parked my truck in the shadows across the street and just watched him. I watched him throw back shot after shot, high-fiving his friends, completely oblivious to the wreckage he had caused just yards away. The sight of his joy was unbearable. It was physical pain. The silence in my truck was suddenly deafening, roaring in my ears, demanding that I do something to balance the scales. The system had failed. God had remained silent. It was just me, the memory of my daughter, and the monster across the street. So, that's the situation I was in, trapped between paralyzing grief and a rage that felt like divine mandate. I knew what I had back home in the locked gun safe in the basement. I hadn't opened it since Martha died, having lost the taste for hunting, but I knew it was there, oiled and ready. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to really put yourself in that truck seat. Feel the humid night air, see the face of the man who killed your child laughing without a care in the world, and tell me, would you just drive home and let the silence consume you again? Pause this video right now and comment below what you would have done, because I need to know I'm not the only one who would make the choice I made. I didn't make a conscious decision to drive home. It felt like autopilot. I drove calmly, obeying all traffic laws, parked in the driveway, and walked into the silent house. I went downstairs to the basement, dialed the combination on the safe, and swung the heavy door open. The smell of hop snow, 9-gun solvent hit me, a scent from a simpler time. I reached in and pulled out the Remington 700. It was heavy, solid, real. I grabbed a box of ammunition from the shelf. My hands were surprisingly steady as I loaded the internal magazine. 1, 2, 3, 4 cartridges. I cycled the bolt, chambering around. The metallic asterisk clack, black asterisk, was the loudest sound I had heard in that house in 5 years. It sounded like justice. I walked back upstairs, the rifle hanging loosely in my hand. I didn't bother turning off the lights. I got back in my truck, the rifle resting on the passenger seat where Sarah used to sit. I drove back to the bar, my mind crystal clear. I wasn't going to snipe him from a distance. That was a coward's way. This had to be personal. He had to know why this was happening. When I got back to the bar, he was gone. My heart jumped into my throat. Had I missed him? But then I saw his car, a flashy new Porsche, pulling out of the lot. He was alone. I followed him. He didn't drive far. He pulled into the parking lot of a secluded park by the river, a notorious spot for late-night hookups and drug deals. He parked near the back, under the sweeping branches of a willow tree, and cut the engine. I pulled up about 20 feet behind him, blocking him in. I killed my lights, took a deep breath, grabbed the rifle, and stepped out into the night. The gravel crunched loudly under my boots as I walked toward his driver's side door. He must have heard me because his window rolled down. "Hey man, you got a light?" He slurred, not looking up from his phone. I stopped 2 feet from his door. "Bryce Davenport," I said. My voice sounded strange, flat and gravelly, like it belonged to someone else. He looked up then, squinting into the darkness. When his eyes adjusted and he saw the outline of the rifle in my hands, the color drained from his face instantly. The drunken haze evaporated, replaced by stark, primal terror. "Whoa, hey, easy old-timer," he stammered, putting his hands up. "What is this? You want my wallet. Take it, man, take the car, whatever you want." "I don't want your money, Bryce," I said, stepping closer so the moonlight caught my face. "Look at me, do you know who I am?" He stared at me, his eyes darting around nervously. He was shaking now. I don't know you, man. Please, just put the gun down." He didn't know me. He didn't remember the man whose life he ruined in that courtroom. "My name is Frank Miller," I said, feeling a tear trace a hot path down my cold cheek. "You killed my daughter, Sarah, 5 years ago tonight on the corner of 4th and Elm. You were drunk then, and you're drunk now." Recognition finally dawned in his eyes, followed by a sickening wave of panicked self-preservation. "Oh God," he whispered. "Look, Mr. Miller, I'm sorry. Okay, it was an accident. I paid my dues, the court said." "The court said you were special," I interrupted, raising the rifle to my shoulder and aiming directly at his chest through the open window. "The court said your daddy's money made your life worth more than hers. But out here, Bryce, in the dark, your daddy's money doesn't mean a damn thing." He started begging then, crying and pleading, snot running down his nose. It was pathetic. This master of the universe, reduced to a whimpering child. Part of me wanted to pull the trigger right then, to end his miserable existence and feel the kick of the rifle against my shoulder. But another part of me, the part that was still Sarah's father, hesitated. Was this what she would want? To see her father become a killer? And then he made the decision for me. While he was begging with one hand, his other hand had been creeping toward the center console. I saw the glint of metal as he whipped out a small, silver handgun, probably something he bought to feel tough. He wasn't fast enough. He was drunk and scared, and I had been hunting deer since I was 12. Before he could even level the pistol at me, my finger tightened on the trigger. The blast of the 30-06 was deafening in the quiet park. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, a brutal, satisfying punch. The shot hit him squarely in the center of his chest. He jerked violently back against the seat, a look of utter shock on his face, and then slumped forward over the steering wheel. The small pistol fell from his hand onto the floor mat. The silence returned instantly, heavier than before, punctuated only by the ringing in my ears and the soft hiss of steam from his radiator. I stood there for a long time, just looking at him. I didn't feel the rush of triumph I expected. I just felt empty. Drained, the fire in my chest was gone, replaced by a cold, aching numbness. I lowered the rifle, walked back to my truck, and sat on the tailgate. I took out my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. My name is Frank Miller. I said calmly. I just killed the man who murdered my daughter. I'm at Riverfront Park. I'll be waiting for you. I sat there under the willow tree, the rifle resting on my lap, waiting for the sirens. When the police arrived, guns drawn, shouting commands, I didn't resist. I stood up slowly, placed the rifle on the ground, and put my hands behind my head. The flashing red and blue lights painted the trees in surreal colors, the chaotic noise finally drowning out the silence that had ruled my life for 5 years. The trial was short. I pleaded guilty. There was no hype. Bryce legal team, no circus. I told the judge exactly what I did and why. I'm currently serving a life sentence in a state penitentiary. It's not so bad here. It's structured. It's noisy. There's no silence in prison. I work in the library, shelving books. Sometimes, late at night in my cell, I wonder if I did the right thing. Vengeance didn't bring Sarah back. It didn't heal the hole in my heart. All it did was swap one kind of prison for another. But then I remember Bryce Davenport's smirk in that courtroom, and I remember him laughing at the bar on the anniversary of her death. And I know this. The scales are balanced now. He got away with murder once, but he didn't get away with it twice. The silence of the grave was broken, and I'm the one who broke it. I have to live with that, and honestly, I can live with it better than I could live with the silence. So that's my story. It's ugly, and it's sad, and there are no winners here, but it's the truth. If you understand where I'm coming from, if you think a father's love sometimes demands terrible things, leave a like on this video. If you want to hear more stories about the messy, complicated reality of life, hit that subscribe button. And please, go down to the comments and share your final thoughts on this whole mess. Was it justice, or was it just another tragedy? I'll see you all in the next story.